Good afternoon. Today I want to give an update on the latest progress of our vaccination programme here in Wales. I also want to say a few words about the first report from the Independent Maternity Services Oversight Panel, which is looking at care provided by the Maternity and Neonatal Services at the former Cymtath University Health Board. That's the Clinical Review Programme reports. But I'll start with the vaccines. We continue to make good progress, rolling out more vaccines and more clinics across Wales. This slide coming up now shows how quickly the programme has gathered pace. It shows the sharp acceleration in the number of vaccines given as supplies of the vaccine have increased. We've opened more vaccine centres and GP practices around Wales. This week, for example, all 16 GP practices in Powys will start vaccinating people. The first 3 community vaccination centres opened at the weekend in North Wales and Bridgend to provide vaccines to 3,000 people. And we're continuing to develop and roll out this model. The very latest figures, published about 15 minutes ago, show almost 271,000 people have had their first dose of the vaccine. So we've now vaccinated 8.7% of the population in just 7 weeks. Vaccination remains our #1 priority. We're doing everything we can to make sure people get the vaccine as quickly as possible. I know everyone here will want to know if we vaccinated 70% of people over 80 and in care homes by the weekend. And we don't have all the data back from the vaccination centres and GP practices around Wales to say whether we have reached the 70% figure. A massive amount of work was done last week and, of course, over the weekend. The number of people vaccinated increased every day as the week progressed. And I want to thank everyone involved in the programme. Your efforts to help protect Wales have been fantastic, and we know that we'll need you to carry on doing more in the weeks ahead. Many people worked through the weekend to vaccinate people, and what you're doing for the future of our country is incredible. We will know in the next day or two if we reach the 70% figure. We do know that more than 70% of care home workers have been vaccinated. Over the weekend, we of course saw significant snowfall across large parts of Wales, and this has had an impact on our vaccination programme. 4 vaccination centres were closed in the Cymtath Morgannwg area yesterday, and 1 mass vaccination centre was closed in the Swansea Bay Health Board area for safety reasons. We also know that a number of GP practices around Wales postponed clinics to today. Some people also decided, quite understandably, that they did not want to go out in the snow for their vaccination appointments yesterday. Everyone who has had their appointment postponed will be contacted and will be offered a new appointment in the first half of this week. And I want to make clear that no vaccine will be wasted. We are vaccinating people as quickly as possible, but people's safety remains paramount. Our focus is on achieving the next 2 markers we have set out in the vaccination plan: to offer vaccination to all care home residents and staff by the end of January, and for the vaccine to be delivered in 250 GP practices across Wales. And the good news is we already have 329 GP practices offering vaccines, and we expect this to increase again this week. This week, we'll also continue to increase the amount of information we publish about the vaccination programme. Starting tomorrow, we'll publish information about the amount of vaccine received, the amount supplied, and the amount of vaccines which are not suitable for use in Wales on a health board basis. This will be updated every week and is in addition to the data which is published every day about the number of first and second doses which are being given. I do want to say a few words now about the first clinical review report from the Independent Maternity Services Oversight Panel, which I set up to look at the care provided to women and their babies by the Maternity and Neonatal Services at the former Cymtath University Health Board. The report is published today. I ordered an independent external review of maternity services at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital in Llantrisant and Prince Charles Hospital in Merthyr Tydfil after significant concerns were raised about the care that mothers and babies received. The independent clinical review programme is the latest stage into the review to find out and learn from what happened. It is looking in detail at 160 women's cases between January 2016 and September 2018. These cases involved women who needed urgent care and, for most, resulted in an admission to the intensive care unit. Women and families are at the heart of this review. Nothing will be able to change what these women and their families experienced at these two hospitals, or the outcomes for those families whose babies died or came to harm. And I am deeply sorry for everything that has already happened. I hope the families can take some comfort from the independence of the reviews, and that where they had questions, they now have some answers to those. Over the last 2 years, there have been many significant improvements and progress made against the original 70 recommendations in the Joint Royal College's review. There is also a very thorough process to ensure all findings from these reviews are incorporated into the maternity and neonatal improvement plans. My thoughts remain with everyone affected by this report today, and those who are still waiting for the outcome of their reviews. Thank you. I will now take questions from journalists. As usual, all the answers will be broadcast live on our social media channels. Let's get a pen out. Now, I think the first question today is from Owen Clark at BBC Wales.
Diolch yn fawr, Gweinidog Iechyd. When will you, do you think, be able to report unequivocally whether or not you've been able to meet that pledge, promise, call you what you will, about 70% of over 80s and 70% of care home staff and residents by the end of yesterday? And do you promise to do so as soon as you're able to tell one way or the other, so that people have trust going forward in your pledges and your delivery against them?
Well, I hope we'll be able to do that by Wednesday. If it takes another day, then it takes another day. If we're able to do it earlier, we'll do it earlier. But whenever that information is available, we will, of course, publish it. And as I indicated, we're actually doing what I said we would do and providing more information on a regular basis. So there'll be information on a Tuesday and a Thursday, giving more detail about the vaccination programme together with the daily updates. As soon as that is available, we'll make that clear and we'll publish it.
At the beginning of the weekend, there was some significant gains in terms of people vaccinated every day. Obviously, the figures for yesterday don't seem to show that progress continuing, perhaps understandably with the situation with the weather. But what is your projection based on capacity at the minute of hitting that mid-February target of the 4 top priority groups having been offered a vaccine, everybody in those groups by mid-February? Are you on track, given what we saw in the early part of the weekend?
Yes, I think we are on track. And the 3 to 4 days of significant gains being made, of more than 20,000 people being vaccinated on each day, are what we can do on a regular basis if we have the supply. And obviously the weather yesterday was another intervening factor that prevented us from achieving more. Otherwise, we would be reporting a much more significant figure today. But we also have the ability to catch up within our system, largely because of the scale and the spread of what we're able to do with colleagues in primary care, currently led by general practice, but as you know, pharmacy and others will come on board in larger number too, and also because the infrastructure we've now created with a range of the community-based centres as well as the mass vaccination centres we've created as well. So yes, I do think we're able to do north of 140,000 each week on a regular basis, and we're expecting more supply to come in to enable us to do more to reach that mid-November milestone of having all 4 of the first priority groups achieved. And the pace we've seen in the second half of last week is a marker of exactly what I said would be possible. A significant step up in the pace and scale of our delivery and the ability to do so on a regular basis, thanks to our fantastic NHS Wales-led vaccination programme here in Wales that I hope people really are proud of. Thank you, Owen. I've now got Megan Boot from ITV Wales.
Thank you, Minister. You say you haven't got the data back yet to say whether you've reached that 70% target. Is that another way of saying you haven't reached it?
No, it's another way of saying exactly what I said. We don't have the data yet, and you will have noticed, Megan, from previous days, that when we have the daily figures, the next day with the update, there's a data lag in some of that entry coming in, and you'll also have seen what was shared openly with journalists in a briefing we did last week, and an excellent article on the other side in BBC that explained the data lag and the quality issue. So we do have a couple of days to know exactly what's happened, and we're making that clear. So it's simply a matter of having the data right and providing it. And as I said to Owen Clark and BBC Wales, we will make sure that is published as soon as it is available.
And why are some people in their 70s getting invited for a vaccine when their loved ones in their 80s haven't had it yet?
We're rolling out the programme because we've made such good progress in vaccinating over 80s in large parts of Wales. So some health boards are able to make progress with that part of the programme. Powys, for example, have gone ahead further. They've managed to go faster than other health boards, and it's a fantastic can-do attitude in Powys that we're seeing across the whole of Wales that means they can do that. By the end of this week, I expect that every health board will have issued letters to over 70s within their population, so the next two groups will start to receive those vaccination appointments. But as I've said repeatedly, the NHS won't leave people behind. We won't forget about you. You will be contacted for an appointment, and please do take up the appointment when that opportunity to do so arises. This is all part of the significant increase in pace and scale that I said would happen, and we're seeing now happen right in front of us, right across the country. Thank you, Megan. I've now got Will Hayward from Wales Online.
Thank you, Health Minister. Regarding the Ttp system in Wales, given that it is common for it to take over 8 days for a close contact to be contacted after they've met a positive case, do we need to rethink how we approach contact tracing in Wales?
I think you're referring to when we had the most significant pressure within our system, and there's a difference between when we've been able to successfully contact people and our success rates still remain high, and then the timeliness of the contact as well. So that's why we've openly published those figures for some time now. And I think you recall from the last week's figures, we'd actually made another step forward from where we were at the turn of the year in terms of the timeliness. So the timeliness really does matter. And this is actually about not just the contact tracing part of it and the capacity to do so. That's why we've invested in the staff teams to do so. But it's also about the part that we can all play in promptly sharing the information that we have if we're contacted and asked to do so, but also then about the crucial aspect of making sure that we do self-isolate when advised to do so. And all of those things are part of what will keep us safe. I actually think when you look at what we've been able to do here in Wales, there's a huge amount of credit that our contact tracing teams do for helping to keep each of us safe.
Thank you very much. Last week, Cardiff and Vale Health Board recorded the highest ever weekly total of people catching COVID in hospital since the start of the pandemic, with more than 100 people catching the virus in just 1 week within our hospitals. Where was this outbreak? Presumably it was UHW. Why have numbers suddenly spiked? Was it a super spreader or just the sheer weight of cases? And what action are you taking to remedy the situation?
Well, I can't give you the direct detail of those two matters, Will. As you know, that there's Landock and there's UHW that are the main sites within Cardiff and Vale. I'm sure we can make sure we get a proper answer to those detailed questions from Cardiff and Vale Health Board, who will have all of the detail to provide you. And I got Dan Bevan from LBC.
Thank you, Health Minister. Good afternoon. You talked about the weather having an adverse effect on the vaccine rollout, but do you expect to have a negative effect on the targets that you've set? And what lessons have you learned? Because judging by the huge drop in vaccines from this weekend, simply you can't afford to have that big drop every time the weather's bad, can you?
Well, as you know, the targets we've set were on the basis we'd be able to have the vaccine come in, so there was a supply side issue and the delivery side. And in the delivery, I think most people will understand, if you have weather like we saw in many parts of Wales, it simply prevents you from doing so. It may take a little more time. However, I think we'll catch up this week from what we lost in terms of activity over this weekend. And so I think you'll see very high figures at the end of this week for what our fantastic NHS Wales-led teams are able to achieve. To get to the middle of February, obviously if there are a significant number of additional interruptions, that may affect what we're able to do. But as I say, I think we're able to catch up this week and still be on track to achieve all 4 priority groups by the middle of February.
Thank you. And of course, many families and friends haven't been able to get together since before Christmas. And of course, just one household, except for one extra person, could meet up on Christmas Day. Can you confirm whether you're looking at allowing, even if it's indoors or out, people being able to meet up beyond this week, as it is a review week, or will people have to wait at least another 3 weeks before they see their loved ones again?
Well, the First Minister will set out all of the matters that the Cabinet have yet to determine in the review on Friday, as you know, Dan, so I'm not in a position to broadcast additional matters. We look at all of the different matters available to us, but I said last week, no one should expect a significant unlocking of the current lockdown measures. They're what are keeping us safe, what is helping to drive down the overall transmission rate. We're now at just under 230 cases per 100,000 from the figures just released today. Now, that's good news to see it coming down, but there's still quite a high level of coronavirus circulating, and our positivity rate is still well above the 10% mark to consider moving beyond that, as well as, of course, the fact that our NHS is still under lots and lots of pressure. Our hospitals, even though we're seeing a decline in admission rates, our critical care units are now operating at still about 140% of their normal capacity. So there's a range of different things to consider, and I hope people will be patient and still do the right thing and recognise that there's still a significant risk to all of us, and we'll have to do the right thing, which may mean that our measures have to be extended for some time to come. But no one should expect a significant change in the arrangements and a significant easing of those arrangements at the end of this week. Thank you, Dan. I've now got Claycy Lynch from S4C.
Diolch, Gweinidog. The Welsh Government today announced a funding package with 17.7 million to support sport in Wales. 13.5 million will go towards Welsh rugby, 1.5 to Welsh football, and the rest divided by various sports. How did the Welsh Government decide how to divide the funding, and do you believe that it has been shared fairly?
Well, as you know, this isn't my direct portfolio, but I know that our officials and Lord Dafydd Ellis-Thomas have been directly engaged in conversation with both Sport Wales and indeed other bodies in the professional games that exist. And it's a recognition of the fact that because we've had to do the right thing to keep the public safe, it has meant that spectator income has not been able to be generated in a range of those sports. And it's the recognition, because rugby's had the largest share, that it's had the biggest hit as well. So we're thinking about how we do that fairly, and I have complete faith in not just my ministerial colleague Dafydd Ellis-Thomas, but also the engagement we've had with those governing bodies. And I think there's been a very positive response from those governing bodies about the help we've been able to provide. As ever, we'll keep on listening and think about what we need to do, because none of us would want to see the professional sporting game across a range of disciplines collapse, but we'll still need to carry on doing the right thing first from a public health point of view to keep all of us safe. And I'm very pleased with the way that the professional sporting game has behaved responsibly throughout the pandemic to date.
Diolch yn fawr. And with Boris Johnson revealing that he is looking at the potential of relaxing some measures before mid-February, do you believe that there should be a nationwide approach to relax the rules?
We have a nationwide approach here in Wales, as you know, so we've got an all-Wales approach. I think a four-nation approach, it's helpful for us to discuss these matters sensibly with each other. There's now much more regular engagement between the four governments. That's with the First Ministers meeting together with Michael Gove for the UK government. We haven't had that direct engagement between the First Ministers of not just Wales, but also Scotland, Northern Ireland and Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister. I think that would help us to do so. But I've said previously, no one should expect any significant moves here in Wales because rates are still relatively high. There's lots of pressure on our NHS. And the last thing we want to do is to see a significant growth in coronavirus cases again, because we do know that the Kent variant is much more widely spread across Wales. We now think it's accounting for at least half of the new cases in South and Mid Wales, as well as being probably accountable for about 70% of cases in North Wales too. So we have to factor in all of those different aspects in any choice that we make. And of course, the same challenges we face are being found in other parts of the UK too. The context may be slightly different, but it's still the case that there's huge pressure on our NHS and we're not in a position to make any significant moves forward. I hope that as it becomes a more real possibility, we'll be able to have a grown-up and constructive conversation between all four governments in the UK. Thank you, Dr. Vaughan. I've now got Steve Bagnall from the Daily Post.
Thank you, Health Minister. Police were called to Bangor's Tesco Extra store on Saturday to tackle a small group of protesters said to be campaigning against the need to wear face masks while shopping, cause queues and disruption outside. What do you say to people who conduct these protests?
Well, I have seen a little about this, and I've seen other similar issues in both Ireland and other parts of the UK. And people conducting this sort of protest that is deliberately disruptive, I think need to think about the disruption they're causing to other people. They also need to consider the fact that they know they're breaking the law and they can expect action to be taken. But it's really about how irresponsible this is, because we know about how transmission works. We know that you are less at risk outside, but you shouldn't, because of your beliefs, do something to cause real alarm to other people who are following the law. And all of us need to play our part. And I just ask people to look again at what's happening, to think about the challenges we're living through with the extraordinary measures we're facing, and to look at the pressure that our National Health Service is under. The deaths that we're reporting, the critical care beds that are occupied, are not matters of fiction. It is very, very real. And all of us need to look at ourselves to play our part and to help support the great majority of people who are already doing the right thing at real cost to each and every one of us.
Thank you, Minister. There were further concerns about the 12-week gap between the first and second doses of the Pfizer vaccine expressed by the British Medical Association over the weekend, with calls for it to be cut to 6 weeks. Does the Welsh Government still believe 12 weeks is the correct way to go?
12 weeks is the outstanding advice from the Joint Committee of Vaccination and Immunisation, otherwise known as the JCVI. It is an independent expert group that advises all four governments, and in all my time as a health minister, I've never gone outside one of their independent expert recommendations. And it's normally the case that the BMA would say that health ministers should follow that advice from the JCVI and should follow the public health advice of the Chief Medical Officer. We're now in a pretty extraordinary position where there's an active campaign to turn over the JCVI advice on vaccination and to turn over the advice of the Chief Medical Officer and indeed Public Health Wales. There's a very clear public health rationale for protecting as many people as quickly as possible, including BMA members, but also people across the country. So I'm not going to change the position because the evidence doesn't support a change. I don't have alternative advice from the independent expert JCVI or our Chief Medical Officer or Public Health Wales. So I'm making a choice based upon the advice, based upon the evidence, and that I think is a very clear position here in Wales. Thank you, Steve. And I've got Rob Taylor from Wrexham.com.
Good afternoon. A local vaccination centre is opening tomorrow and will run 3 days a week, with the operation note saying that that could be increased but is dependent on the supply of vaccine. For clarity, where is the issue in supply that stops that running several days a week more? And for those locally who feel a 3-day operation is quite limited, are their expectations too high?
It's the reality of how much vaccine we've got to deliver. So last week, we delivered a huge amount in just a few days. We could have done more. And as I said in the opening, we've got more than 300 general practices across Wales who are already on board and delivering the vaccine. We're then delivering vaccinations in different centres, not just our mass vaccination centres, but community centres too. Now we're using all of the available vaccine we can do to push into our system. We're getting more of the AstraZeneca supply again this week. If we had more, we could deliver more. And that's the reality, and I've set that out several times. I think, to be fair, there was an element of disbelief that we would be able to significantly flex up our delivery to the scale we saw in the last few days when we're reporting daily figures nearer to 12 or 13,000 immunisations being delivered a day. But we really can go north of 20,000 every day on a consistent basis because of the scale and reach that our programme allows us. So for the centre you describe, it could go for further days if we had more supply, and that is simply a matter of how fast the manufacturers can provide it, how fast the regulator can approve it as safe and effective for use.
Thank you. And a graph has been released, I'm not sure if it was shown earlier in this briefing, that has Wales now leading on the 7-day rolling average compared to England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. If you added Israel to that graph, then they would be much, much higher. Last time I asked, you didn't want to focus on their performance, but now as you are making external comparisons, why is that country doing things so much better? And is there any communication taking place to learn from what they are doing and perhaps adapt your plan?
We of course look at what other countries do, but as you know, Rob, most people are interested in the comparison between the four nations. And that's a point that we accept is inevitable. That information has been provided by our journalistic colleague Peter Gillibrand. He's promoted it over the weekend, showing how in the last 7 days the pace and the scale of our delivery has significantly increased to match and slightly surpass England and the other nations. And of course, earlier on in the vaccination programme, there were regular questions about why we're in fourth place out of the four UK nations. So it's a point of regular interest. And I actually think that many people aren't really that interested in what's happening in Israel as a comparison. But from a professional point of view, we of course share information and look to see what happens internationally. If there are things we can do differently to further improve what we're able to do, we'll do so. But going back to your first question, the reason we can't deliver even more is because of the supply. If we get more supply, we can go even faster. We have the scale and the ability to do so. And that is thanks to our fantastic NHS Wales-led vaccination programme. And I really am tremendously proud of what they've already achieved and what they're capable of achieving in the weeks ahead. Thank you. I've now got Tom Magner from Carers World.
Good afternoon, Health Minister. Thank you. Vaccine priorities, of course, a key issue with our audience. Can I look specifically at JCVI Band 4 and to people who are classed as clinically extremely vulnerable? Each will almost certainly have the support of at least one unpaid carer, commonly two. Given that the JCVI list is advice, and that both you and your colleague, the First Minister, have said that Wales is an older community than the other home nations, why has the Welsh Government not explicitly included these unpaid carers in Band 4? And linked to that, is it not safer if they're vaccinated at their GP rather than at a hub where physical distancing perhaps is more difficult?
I think there are a couple of different things here. I'll take your final point first, and that is that the place to deliver the vaccine will vary slightly depending on where you are. Not everyone is being asked to go to a hub. Lots of people are having GP-led vaccinations, and people who are housebound, we've got mobile units as well as general practice helping deliver some of those vaccines to people in their own homes. So it isn't the case everyone will be told to go to a mass vaccination hub. The second point is about prioritisation. And we are following the JCVI prioritisation, which is why unpaid carers are in priority group 6. And we'll clarify that on our website today. I think there's been a misunderstanding about that. I think some concern that we can put to bed about unpaid carers being in that priority group. The clinic extremely vulnerable won't all have unpaid carers. A number of them will do, but we're doing this in accordance with people who are the most vulnerable, most likely to come to harm. And we expect to get through all of those by the middle of February. And it's actually a very large group of people. We have about 130,000 in that group here in Wales. And the difficulty we find is once we start to unpick and go outside that JCV advice, we'll end up in something of a free-for-all. And I think actually, despite the understandable concern that some groups have expressed about where they are, I think most people accept that having something objective, independent and expert to guide how each government delivers the programme is useful and provides confidence that we're doing so correctly. This, I think, is the right way to provide the maximum confidence and to help protect the most vulnerable people as quickly as possible. And it's exactly what we're doing.
Thank you for that. Can I just look at another aspect of advice? A common plea from our viewers is that each unpaid carer should be vaccinated at the same time as the person for whom they care. I raised this pairing issue with the independent SAGE panel. Dr. Kit Yates of the panel told me that vaccine priority is based largely on mathematical modelling and that often doesn't match real life. Shouldn't the Welsh Government be looking at real life on this pairing issue and others rather than accepting modelling-based advice? If not, why not?
Well, the modelling advice tells us how we can protect the most vulnerable people in the country, Tom. And the danger is, and this is a part of the challenge about the real-world situation that we face, is that if you say that you can go along with someone else to have your vaccine provided, you'll then significantly add to the numbers, and we can end up finding ourselves not vaccinating some of those most vulnerable people as quickly as otherwise do. And that means they're vulnerable to harm, and it potentially leads to us having more avoidable death. So there isn't an easy way to go about this, because there are real-world situations that I'm sure you could describe that would suggest that it may make just some more sense to have different people coming through in that one individual circumstance. But that then takes away the much bigger truth that we won't get to our most vulnerable people as quickly as possible. As ever, there's a balance. There isn't a straightforward or easy answer. to many of the questions that people quite reasonably ask. I think the priority list that we have is objective, it's fair, and it will protect the most vulnerable people from harm. 99% of people who would otherwise face hospitalisation or death are within the first 9 priority groups, including, of course, unpaid carers in priority group 6. Thank you, Tom. I've now got Andrew Nuttall from The Leader.
Thank you, Minister. Can you address some of the worries that we've heard from our readers in recent days and weeks, trusting that vaccines will have sort of effectiveness with these new strains? As you've mentioned previously, new strains such as the Kent one have been accountable for a lot of cases in North Wales and Mid Wales.
Well, my understanding is that we're clear that the Kent strain is the vaccines are effective against it. It's part of the concern with the other strains from around the world, the strains that have been identified in Brazil, in Japan, which appear to be a variant of the Brazil strain, and South Africa, and also why we took action as quickly as we did with the Danish mink-related variant, were because of the potential to make the vaccines less effective. We're still learning about all of those matters, but it is why we need to vaccinate as quickly as possible. So the pace we've delivered in the last few days, as promised, is really important for that. But it's also why we're considering even further extraordinary measures in addition to the public health measures that I've already introduced here in Wales and in common with other governments in the rest of the UK, in introducing public health restrictions on travel and on quarantine requirements. So the First Ministers and Michael Gove have discussed this as well, whether further measures are needed, and I've discussed this with other health ministers and other representatives from other UK governments too. So we're still considering what more we need to do to keep all of us safe.
Thank you. And previously, the First Minister has said that marginal headroom has been made during the lockdown. So we just wanted to know, and I'm sure a lot of parents are in the same situation as well, sort of what are the realistic chances of children being able to be back in the classroom after the February half term?
Well, I couldn't give you a definitive answer to that, and I think it'd be wrong for me to try to do so, because Cabinet are meeting today. We'll have more evidence updated from our own scientific advisors. We'll then need to think about whether we can give a signal or not. And I don't want to set unrealistic expectations or set hairs running. We're also having conversations, and you'll have heard this from the Education Minister and the First Minister, conversations with local government as the main employers, together with teaching trade union leaderships and the staff unions who work in schools in particular, to try to understand if different patterns of teaching and learning could allow face-to-face learning to return. And that's included things like whether you would have rotas for a smaller number of people attending school within each week, and also the potential to consider whether younger age groups could return earlier as well. Those are conversations that haven't been concluded, as well as the practical arrangements for return. We also have to balance that up with our continuing and expanding knowledge base about the new variants and the sort of headroom we'll have available. The final thing I say is that so many of the times when we talk about schools, it's the impression is given that schools themselves and what happens within the schools are the main issue. And actually, as well as our understandable desire to make sure that the arrangements we put in place already are as clear as possible and successful as possible in preventing transmission, and school leaders have done a very good job in having a secure environment as possible previously, the clear advice we continue to get is that it isn't what happens in school between pupils and staff that's the issue. It's the adult interactions within each workplace, and it's what adults then do if children are in school, and the opportunities for greater mixing between parents. And that's the main issue that we still come back to, but the headroom we need to have a more significant school opening. So perhaps some balance in how we describe schools and some accuracy, because the way schools operate themselves isn't the biggest concern that our scientists have about further measures to reintroduce face-to-face learning, and the harm, of course, that has been caused to children while that face-to-face learning is not taking place. Thank you, Andrew. I've now got Charles Stilianu from Atrium News.
Thank you, Minister. So how is the Welsh Government planning to repay the vaccination costs and increase public incomes during the crisis?
Well, we're paying for the vaccination costs through our budgets. You'll recall that we have budgets we allocate here, and health has received this most significant part of the COVID-related monies, together with supporting the economy. We recognise the key importance of vaccination and what it will do and allow us to have different choices to be made. And we're there to balance all of the different parts of the rest of our budgets. That's a difficult task that our finance minister have and the individual portfolio ministers like myself have. But I think most people understand why health and the economy are the two big priorities for public financial support.
So far, coronavirus testing hasn't been 100% accurate across the globe. Vaccination is currently voluntary in the United Kingdom. Is this something that the Welsh Government is planning to change?
Okay, so on testing, no test is 100% effective all of the time and 100% accurate. That's an unfair standard to set for any test. We are very clear that our PCR tests are highly accurate, especially at this point in time. We have relatively high rates of coronavirus transmission across the country. When it comes then, though, to the potential to try to make vaccinations compulsory, I think I've been clear enough about this in the past. We won't be changing the law to try to make vaccinations compulsory. That isn't a step we're going to take. What people may find, though, is that to access other services in the future, that having the vaccine may be a requirement. You could understand how some employers may want to know whether people have been vaccinated, especially if they're going to have close contact with others. The travel industry may want to introduce a different standard for vaccination and travel as well. Those are questions for the future that individual employers, businesses and other sectors may want to have, but not matters for the government. As far as the government is concerned here, we won't be changing the law and vaccinations won't be compulsory. Thank you for your questions, Charles. Thank you, everyone. I'm sure I'll see you in the very near future.